I'm going to be speaking with you today about the advantages and disadvantages of toggling between contracting and full time work. I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. People hire me for no BS job search advice and coaching globally because I make things much easier for people around their search and a lot more. Now, I started off with a ChatGPT search because I was curious what they would say, and I'm going to critique their answers plus offer a few of my own. So, in the advantages of toggling between contracting and full time, they start off with higher pay. Consultants typically make more on an hourly basis than full time employees. Generally true, and if it isn't true, you probably shouldn't be doing it. So, for example, for those of you who are making $75 an hour, that equates to about $150,000 a year. The typical full-time employee isn't going to be making that. So there is a differential between full-time and contract work. Overtime, generally, and there are always going to be exceptions to these points, full-time employees are not going to be eligible for overtime. Skills development. Full-time employees may miss out on opportunities to expand their skill sets. Why? Because they're kind of put into a box by the nature of the work that they're currently doing. That may or may not be true. It's really going to depend on the organization that you're working with. Number 4, flexibility. Consultants have more control over the kind of work they take on and can tailor the companies they work with to follow their ideal career path. I'm not so sure about that. Again, it depends. Career path? No. I think fundamentally as a consultant, yes, you do have flexibility because you move from one assignment to another. But often consultants will take on whatever is offered to them that fits the price that they're willing to pay, the location, a variety of different things. And in that regard, yes, they make a decision, but it's really going to depend on the market and skill sets. Job security. This was a fun one. Full-time employee roles typically offer greater job security, according to ChatGPT. Is that really true? I'll leave it to you to answer, but I do know that every time there's a recession, yes, consultants get pushed out, but so do a lot of full-time people. And the problem is the full-time people have been earning less than the consultants, have been able to bank less because they're making less, and thus become frightened more quickly about compensation. Freedom. Freedom falls into the category of with flexibility. Consulting offers more freedom and flexibilities in terms of when, where, and what you work on. What you work on, I'm not so sure sometimes, because after all, you wind up in situations where you get the offers, just like full-time people. When and where, yes, you do have choices about that, particularly the when. You can take time off and no one's going to look at you and go, excuse me, you're taking 3 months off? That becomes your choice about when you work and when you don't work. So yes and no on that one. Project specific. Consultants are typically project specific, while full-time employees can be moved to a variety of projects once hired. The movement of employees will tend to be limited in most firms. Matter of fact, in many firms, once you join in that role, you will always be in that role, and there is no mobility. Where there are options for advancement, somewhat limited. So I'm going to defer to you in terms of how you interpret that. Accountability. As a consultant, you need to create your own work structures and be accountable for your impact. Well, this is a fun one. Accountability. Employees have to be accountable too. They've got a manager, boss, a senior leader, whomever, who the organization may create the work structure, but you ultimately have to deliver. As a consultant, often you're stepping into someone else's work structure, and I have to deliver as well. This one's a little bit ambiguous, so I'm not going to go beyond that. Soft skills. Consulting requires strong soft skills such as empathy and agility. Not so sure about that. Full-time people require that as well, and working with colleagues, with senior management and such. Training. Employers may provide training to their full-time employees, while independent consultants are responsible for finding and paying for their own training. Again, generally true for the consultants, not always true for the full-time employees. I've seen so many people who've had to pay out of pocket for their own training, and thus this one I think is not true. Now, the disadvantages. Again, this is to some degree the flip of what I've spoken about. Full-time employees have more job security than consultants. And not so true. No overtime. Full-time employees are not eligible for overtime. Generally true. Limited skill development. Full-time employees may miss out on opportunities to expand their skill sets. True. Lack of in-house knowledge. Consultants often lack knowledge of in-house procedures, which can create work conflict. Also true, but the consultants normally sort that out. The institutional knowledge of working in an organization has some effect on the consultant performance, but most consultants are quickly adaptable. And thus, that institutional knowledge that the full-time employee may possess, I think is overrated here. Limited control. Employers have limited control over independent contractors who are guided only by what is spelled out in the contract. In theory, true, less so in practice. Tax implications. Contract employees have to factor in tax implications as well as the cost of travel, supplies, and health insurance. I must say they have the advantage of having those costs of travel and supplies deductible, whereas a full-time employee does not. The cost of health insurance can be very expensive and does have to get factored into a consultant's rate. So yes, that part is also true. Training. Independent consultants are responsible for finding and paying for their own training, and often, as I said, full-time employees are as well. Consultants are typically project-specific, while full-time employees can be moved to a variety of projects once hired, and then I'll add on, and not always to their liking. Often not to their liking. And they risk losing their jobs to outsourcing. The contractor knows when it's coming because the contract makes it very clear. Number 9, end of contract. Consulting positions are meant to end after completing a project. Very true. You know when your work is going to end. You have the opportunity to market yourself in advance because you know when it's going to terminate and find something that's going to make sense for you. Now, here comes expenses again. The expenses of commuting, frequently traveling, and covering other expenses could quickly add up and cancel out the higher hourly rates of a contract person. Now, as I said, commuting and other expenses are normally deductible for the employee. For frequent traveling, which I'm going to assume is getting on a plane or going somewhere, are going to wind up being reimbursable. A consultant is not going to travel out of pocket to go to a location. So let me add in, as a contractor, you have to continuously be marketing yourself. In theory, you as an employee have to do that as well. However, most employees skate on that. As a contractor, you know you have to do it. You may also have downtime between assignments that you have to factor in, and most consultants know to do that. You also, and this is really the big one that I always have concern about, once you get to a certain level of billing, you start to be comfortable with that. And thus, when you're making, let's say, $100 an hour, That equates to $200,000 a year. But your real value for full-time work may be 125 to 140 or 150 because you're a highly skilled doer and not a leader, which is what corporations look for in a $200,000 a year person. On the other side of this, for employees, they often become complacent. They know where their desk is, they know where they're going to work every day. They become comfortable and don't do the kind of things for self-promotion internally or externally that are so critical in our modern times that you have to be thinking of. Contractors know to do this. Lastly, you may not have the this is not the last one. You may not have the internal mobility you need or want as an employee. You may have to change jobs more than you think. You may not need the benefits offered, but no one's going to pay you the amount you're saving them. After all, your wife, husband, or partner may be getting far better benefits than you are, they can get you on their plan, and you're saving your employer $15,000 a year, $20,000 a year in health insurance costs. And they're not going to turn around and say, oh, we'll pay you the difference. No, you're stuck at that one salary. There's no benefit to you there. The work you do as an employee may become repetitive. You may wind up working for idiots and jerks, which I think is true of both, but it's always a problem. And this is also true of both. Your opinion may not be valued. So I want to offer some advice for you with some observations. ChatGPT was helpful with this. You have to think this through and speak to people. This is the way you want to approach your career. Toggling between full-time and contracting, I think does make sense, but there comes a point where you have to settle in for the longer haul. And again, I've laid out benefits and disadvantages of each. So I hope you found this helpful. I'm Jeff Altman. My website is thebiggamehunter.us. Go to the blog and go exploring. There's a lot there that will help you. Plus, you can schedule time for coaching with me, ask me questions through Trusted Advisor Services, find out about my video courses, books, and guides. Again, there's a lot there to help you. Also, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/IN/The Big Game Hunter. Have a terrific day and be